I want to talk about the FinCEN's beneficial ownership database. We have gotten a few calls about this because the new regulation means that the banks, credit unions, and all the financial institutions, they have to gather this information and verify this information about the individuals who run a business before a new account can be opened, any new account, even if it's a new account for a current customer. So there's a lot of concern out there about this. But Treasury estimates the proposed rules to implement this act, the Corporate Transparency Act, will require more than 25 million existing small businesses to spend an aggregate amount of more than $4 billion to submit their reports on the beneficial owners to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Is this an accurate estimate of the cost of the compliance for small businesses? And being that small businesses are the backbone of the economy, is it really wise to place more mandates on them at a time when we are just on the verge of a major recession? So do you think that's accurate?
So, Senator, my understanding is that the cost to the average small business will be quite modest. You're right that those numbers in terms of total small businesses in our country is quite large, which I think is something that we want to grow at the Treasury Department. We want to create room for more small businesses in the country rather than less. And what we're going to do is make sure that we set up this regulatory regime in a way that is as scaled to the challenge as possible, so that small businesses reporting requirements are as modest as possible in light of the requirements that Congress has provided us with. Our goal is not to create a regime that will ask for more information than is needed, but rather to be in a position where we're able to protect the national security for those small businesses, all the small businesses in this country as well. So we're going to continue to work with small businesses who submitted a great deal of comments to make sure that we set up a regime that is best suited to the challenges that they face going forward, and we're not looking to set up something that is overly robust.
When do you think that they will have to start complying with this rule?
So, Senator, I think we're going to continue to work through that. I don't have a sense at the moment as to when compliance will be required, but our goal is to try and put out the final rule as soon as possible and to build a database that is useful, frankly, to law enforcement going forward. Ultimately, I know that the thing that small businesses that I've talked to about this rulemaking, but about regulation in general, that they view is they want to make sure that they can do what they can to help protect our country as well. But they want to make sure that the information they provide is actually going to be useful to helping to protect people in their community and around the country. So in addition to putting out the rule, we want to make sure that we create a database that's going to be useful to law enforcement in their communities, but around the country, and also to our national security community. So we want to make sure that whatever we're collecting is going to be used, and it's going to be used effectively going forward.
Can you talk about any exceptions?
Exceptions to the rules?
That they would not have to comply? Is there any exceptions that a business would not have to comply?
So, Senator, I think the goal for us is to make sure that we build a database that is inclusive of as many companies as possible in order to protect the national security. To the conversation I was having with Senator Van Hollen, the challenge we have is that when we create exceptions, what then happens is that those who want to illicitly move money then simply create companies that fit within that exception. So our goal really is to try and find a way to make something that is comprehensive, but in which the reporting requirements are as modest as possible in order to make it as easy as possible for companies to comply and for us to have a holistic database in this country.
A lot of people really see this just as an extra mandate and as extra work, so I hope that it does prove to be a very beneficial tool in addressing this issue, because it will be extremely burdensome for a lot of people. Thank you.
So, Senator, our goal is to take your feedback and the feedback of countless people to mind in terms of how we design this, to make sure that we reduce the burden as much as possible, because we know that ultimately the reason a bipartisan majority of Congress passed this legislation was because they care deeply about our national security, but they also want to make sure that we don't overly burden our small businesses, and we've kept those two things in mind as we think about the design of this regulation.